It all began on a night meant for celebration, the annual company party. Laura, my wife, was on my arm as we walked into the glamorous venue. She looked beautiful, dressed in a deep red gown that turned heads. From the outside, we seemed like the perfect couple. But behind the smiles, I carried the weight of suspicion that had been gnawing at me for weeks. The room buzzed with laughter and conversation, but I couldn't focus. Laura seemed distracted, her eyes darting around the room as if she were searching for someone. When Jake, one of my coworkers and a man I had once considered a friend, walked in, her entire demeanor shifted. She became livelier, her laugh louder, her smiles brighter. I noticed the glances they exchanged, quick, fleeting, yet enough to confirm my fears. But I stayed silent, my anger simmering just beneath the surface. I didn't want to confront her here, not yet. Tonight was about timing, and I had a plan that would leave no room for excuses or lies. Looking back, the signs of Laura's betrayal were there long before the party. At first, it was subtle, the way she started spending more time on her phone, giggling at messages she wouldn't share. When I'd ask who she was texting, she'd brush it off with vague excuses about work or friends. Then came the late nights. She'd claim she had extra projects or team meetings that ran late. She'd come home smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't mine. Her smile strained when I tried to kiss her. I wanted to believe her, to trust her, but her behavior didn't match her words. Even at home, there was a growing distance between us. She no longer laughed at my jokes or leaned on me for support like she used to. Conversations became short and robotic, as if she was just going through the motions. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering where we had gone wrong. Was it me? Was I not enough? But the most painful part was the emotional detachment. Her once affectionate hugs turned into quick pats on the back. Her kisses, once warm and full of love, felt cold and distant. It was as if she was a stranger living in our home. My heart ached, but I didn't know how to confront her without proof. Instead of accusing her, I started observing. I took note of her behavior, her timing, her mood swings. My suspicions weren't just baseless fears. They were rooted in a pattern I couldn't ignore. Deep down, I knew there was someone else, and I was determined to find out who. The night I discovered the truth was the turning point. Laura had left her phone charging in the kitchen, something she rarely did. Normally, it was glued to her hand or tucked away in her purse. The temptation was overwhelming. I hesitated for a moment, torn between my need for answers and my fear of what I might find. But curiosity and suspicion won. Her Messages app was the first thing I checked. My heart sank as I scrolled through a thread labeled, Jake Work. It wasn't work-related at all. The texts were full of flirtatious comments, inside jokes, and plans to meet up. One message read, "Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again." Another, "He has no clue. We'll be fine as long as we're careful." The words blurred on the screen as I stared at them, my hands trembling. It wasn't just one or two messages. There were dozens, spanning weeks, maybe months. My worst fears were confirmed. The woman I had loved and trusted had been lying to me, sneaking around behind my back. It didn't stop there. I found photos too. Selfies of them at a coffee shop, him kissing her on the cheek, and one of them together at a park I didn't recognize. These weren't just casual encounters. This was a full-blown affair. The betrayal hit me like a punch to the gut. And Jake? He wasn't just some random guy. He worked at my company, someone I saw almost every day, someone I had trusted. The realization stung even more that I knew I couldn't confront her without a plan. This wasn't just about catching her red-handed. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done. So I screenshot everything, the messages, the photos, and emailed them to myself. I was going to use this evidence when the time was right. As I put her phone back where I found it, my mind raced. Couldn't sleep that night. All I could think about was how to expose her betrayal in the most undeniable way possible. After discovering the truth, my emotions swung wildly between rage, heartbreak, and an eerie sense of clarity. I wanted to scream, to throw things, to confront her right then and there. But I knew that wouldn't be enough. Laura and Jake had gone to great lengths to deceive me. I needed to make sure their betrayal didn't just come to light, it had to hit them where it hurt most. I spent days meticulously planning my revenge. Confronting her in private felt too small, too quiet for the scale of her betrayal. I wanted a moment she wouldn't forget, one that would leave a mark on her life the way her affair had left a scar on mine. The annual company party seemed like the perfect setting. Everyone would be there, including Jake. The idea of exposing their affair in front of our colleagues gave me a sense of grim satisfaction. The first step was to consult a lawyer. I needed to protect myself legally and ensure that when I exposed her, everything was set in stone. The lawyer helped me draft a detailed separation letter. It wasn't just a formality. It outlined every detail of her infidelity, including the evidence I had collected. I wanted her to see, in black and white, just how deeply she had wronged me. Next, I prepared the evidence. I printed the screenshots of her messages and photos with Jake, neatly organizing them into a file. I wasn't planning to show them to everyone at the party. This wasn't about public humiliation. But I needed her to know that I knew everything. Finally, I rehearsed the moment in my head. I would slip the letter into her purse while she was distracted, ensuring she would find it when the time was right. The plan was set, and all I had to do was wait for the party. Those few days leading up to the event were excruciating. I acted as if everything was normal, even though my heart felt like it was being torn apart. I couldn't let Laura suspect anything. I watched her, wondering how she could laugh, smile, and go about her life so easily while betraying me. It only fueled my determination. The night of the party, I dressed in my best suit, ready to play my part. I wasn't just a husband attending an event. I was a man with a mission. The annual company party was as extravagant as ever. String lights, elegant decor, and the sound of laughter filling the air. I arrived with Laura on my arm, playing the part of a devoted husband. Inside, the crowd buzzed with excitement, co-workers mingling with drinks in hand. Laura, however, had her own agenda. I watched her closely, though I pretended not to. Her eyes darted around the room, scanning the crowd until they landed on Jake. It was subtle, but I noticed the way her expression softened, her lips curving into a barely noticeable smile. She excused herself, claiming she needed to catch up with some friends. I let her go, knowing this was just the beginning. From across the room, I observed their interactions. Laura moved closer to Jake, laughing a little too loudly at his jokes, her hand grazing his arm more often than necessary. They thought they were being discreet, but their connection was painfully obvious to anyone paying attention. Fortunately for them, most people were too busy with their own conversations to notice. Unfortunately for them, I wasn't most people. I kept my distance, nursing a drink and chatting casually with coworkers, all the while keeping an eye on the two of them. I could feel the tension building inside me, but I reminded myself to stay calm. Tonight wasn't about anger, it was about execution. The moment came when I saw Laura glance around nervously before slipping away toward the back hallway. Jake followed a minute later, his movements just as cautious. My heart raced as I realized where they were going. I trailed them quietly, staying far enough behind to avoid being seen. Sure enough, they disappeared into the bathroom together, the door clicking shut behind them. Standing there in the dimly lit hallway, I felt a mix of rage and vindication. I knew what they were doing, and it solidified everything I'd already suspected. But I didn't storm in or make a scene. That wasn't part of my plan. Instead, I walked back to the main room, took a deep breath, and reached into my jacket pocket. I found Laura's purse, left carelessly on a chair near our table. I slid the separation letter into it, making sure it was in a spot she'd notice. My job was done. All that was left was to wait. When Laura returned a few minutes later, her face was flushed, and she avoided meeting my eyes. I smiled at her, pretending nothing had happened. Little did she know, the truth was about to hit her harder than she ever expected. Laura came back from the bathroom with Jake not long after, her face flushed, her makeup slightly smudged. She tried to act normal, plastering on a smile as she joined me at the table. Jake, on the other hand, kept his distance, blending into the crowd as if nothing had happened. They thought they were clever, but I'd seen everything. My patience was wearing thin, but I kept my composure. As the night went on, Laura laughed and mingled as if she didn't have a care in the world. Meanwhile, the letter sat quietly in her purse, waiting to deliver the blow. My heart pounded with anticipation, knowing the moment of reckoning was near. It wasn't until the party started winding down that Laura finally opened her purse. She reached in for her phone but paused when her hand brushed against the envelope. I watched her pull it out, her brow furrowing as she unfolded the paper. Her expression shifted instantly. The smile vanished, replaced by confusion, then shock and finally panic. She quickly glanced around, her face pale, as she scanned the contents of the letter. I could almost hear the wheels turning in her head as she realized what was happening. The evidence was there in black and white, screenshots of her messages, a detailed account of her affair, and the declaration that I was done. She looked up at me, her mouth opening and closing as if trying to form words. But there was nothing she could say. I met her gaze, calm and steady, and simply said, "You know why?" Laura tried to speak, stammering out excuses and apologies, but I didn't let her. "We'll talk later," I said coolly, standing up and leaving her there, clutching the letter like it was a bomb about to explode. The room seemed to grow quieter, though no one else knew what had just happened. I walked out of the venue, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. I'd taken back control, but the weight of her betrayal still lingered. The days following the party were a whirlwind of emotions and consequences. Laura tried to reach out, flooding my phone with calls and messages, begging for a chance to explain. But what was there to explain? The evidence was irrefutable, and her actions spoke louder than any excuse she could offer. I didn't respond. I needed space, and more importantly, I needed her to understand the gravity of what she had done. At work, the fallout hit Jake harder than I expected. Rumors spread quickly. Though I hadn't made the affair public, people noticed the tension. Jake's frequent meetings with Laura didn't go unnoticed, and whispers started circulating. Eventually, the office became a hostile place for him. His once charming demeanor couldn't save him from the looks and unspoken judgment of our colleagues. Not long after, Jake requested a transfer to another branch. The company granted it, but the damage to his reputation was already done. Laura, on the other hand, faced a different kind of reckoning. When she finally got the chance to talk to me in person, she broke down, sobbing and pleading for forgiveness. "It was a mistake," she said over and over again. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." But her words felt hollow. I'd spent weeks grappling with the pain of her betrayal, and now that she was in front of me, all I felt was numbness. "You didn't just hurt me," I told her. "You destroyed our trust, our marriage, and everything we built together." I handed her the signed separation papers, and she realized there was no going back. The reality of her choices hit her like a freight train. She moved out of the house soon after, leaving behind the memories of what once was. For me, the hardest part was rebuilding my life. Nights felt lonelier, and the silence of the house was deafening. But with time, I began to heal. I focused on my work, spent time with friends who supported me, and rediscovered hobbies I had long forgotten. The betrayal left scars, but it also taught me valuable lessons. I learned the importance of self-respect and the strength it takes to walk away from something toxic. Walking away from Laura and the life we had built was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was also the most liberating. The betrayal had broken me, but it didn't define me. Instead, it became the catalyst for a new chapter in my life, one where I finally put myself first. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into rebuilding. I focused on my career, working harder than ever and earning the respect of my peers. The very same colleagues who had once admired Laura and me as a couple now offered quiet words of support. Some even admitted they had suspected something was off between Laura and Jake long before I knew. It hurt, but it also reminded me that the truth has a way of coming out, no matter how well it's hidden. I also took time to reconnect with the parts of myself I had neglected during my marriage. I rediscovered my love for hiking and spent weekends exploring trails, feeling the fresh air clear my mind. I joined a gym, not just to stay fit but to channel my emotions into something productive. Slowly, I started to feel like myself again. As for Laura, I heard through mutual friends that she was struggling. She'd lost her job not long after Jake's transfer, the tension at work proving too much to bear. I didn't take pleasure in her downfall, but it was a stark reminder of the consequences of her choices. Jake, too, faded into the background, and as far as I know, their relationship didn't survive the weight of their betrayal. One day, as I looked at the signed separation papers, I felt a sense of closure. The pain of the betrayal would always be a part of my story, but it no longer consumed me. I had come out the other side stronger, wiser, and more determined to live a life free of lies and toxicity. Now, I focus on the future, knowing that trust and loyalty are non-negotiable. I've learned to value my self-worth and never settle for anything less than honesty and respect. Betrayal may have knocked me down, but it didn't keep me there. I'm moving forward, one step at a time, toward a life I truly deserve. And that's how I walked away. Not just from my cheating wife, but from the lies and the betrayal that had consumed my life. It wasn't easy, but sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that set us free. I may have lost a marriage, but I gained something far more important: my self-respect. To anyone out there going through something similar, remember this. You deserve honesty, loyalty, and love. Don't settle for less. Betrayal may knock you down, but it doesn't define you. It's how you rise that truly matters. Thanks for listening to my story. If this resonated with you, let me know in the comments. Have you ever faced betrayal like this? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Unheard Stories for more real-life tales like this one. Until next time, stay strong and remember, you're worth it.